Did you know there are 16 landlocked countries in Africa that lost their sea access due to unfair colonization borders? This is a question that might pique your curiosity. A landlocked country, as the term suggests, is a nation that doesn't have a coast. It is surrounded entirely by land, with no direct access to the world's oceans. Such a geographical position can present significant challenges. Trade, for instance, becomes more complex and costly, as goods must pass through at least one other country to reach global markets. This situation can stifle economic growth and development. Out of the 44 landlocked countries globally, Africa is home to the most, with 16 on the list. These nations have been grappling with the disadvantages of their geographical positioning for years, a predicament largely caused by the arbitrary borders drawn during the colonial era. Now let's dive into these 16 African landlocked countries. Starting off our list, we have Burkina Faso, with a population of around 20 million people. This West African nation was once part of the vast Mossy kingdoms, but the arrival of French colonists in the late 19th century saw the division and eventual loss of its coastal access. Today, Burkina Faso remains a vibrant nation, but its landlocked status presents significant challenges to its development and prosperity. Next, we turn our gaze to Chad, located in the heart of the African continent. Home to approximately 15 million people, Chad's geographical position is the result of colonial-era divisions by France and Britain. Despite its rich cultural heritage and diverse ecosystem, Chad's lack of sea access significantly hampers its economic growth and international trade. Moving on, let's look at the Central African Republic, with a population of just under 5 million. A former French colony, the Central African Republic was shaped by European colonial powers who drew borders without regard to ethnic and cultural affiliations. This landlocked status has led to complex socio-economic challenges, making it one of the world's poorest countries. Finally, we come to Botswana, a country of more than 2 million people. Once a British protectorate known as Bechuanaland, Botswana was left landlocked after the scramble for Africa, a rapid colonization period by European powers. This has limited Botswana's economic opportunities and has led to reliance on neighboring countries for access to maritime trade. These are just the first 4 countries. Let's continue our journey. Moving on, we have Burundi, which is home to approximately 11 million people. Nestled in the heart of Africa, Burundi was once a part of the German East Africa colony until the end of World War I, when it found itself landlocked due to the arbitrary borders drawn by the colonial powers. Next, let's turn our attention to Ethiopia. With a staggering population of over 100 million, Ethiopia is the most populous landlocked country, not just in Africa, but in the entire world. Ethiopia's loss of sea access occurred in the late 20th century, when Eritrea, a province that had provided Ethiopia with its coastline, gained independence. Third on our list for this segment is Lesotho, a small nation of just over 2 million people, completely surrounded by South Africa. Lesotho's landlocked status is a direct result of British colonial rule. In the late 19th century, the British designated Lesotho as a protectorate, isolating it within the borders of what is now South Africa. Finally, we have Malawi, a country of roughly 18 million people. Malawi, once part of the British protectorate of Nyasaland, lost its sea access when the colonial powers carved up the continent without regard for the geographical or cultural realities on the ground. Each of these countries, Burundi, Ethiopia, Lesotho, and Malawi, with their combined population of over 130 million people, share a common legacy. They were all left landlocked by the capricious borders drawn by colonial powers, a situation that has had profound implications for their development and their place in the world economy. But there is hope. There is a movement to create the United Maritime for Africa, an organization that advocates for these countries to regain their rightful access to the sea. This is not just about correcting historical wrongs, it's about ensuring that these nations have the tools they need to thrive in the modern world. And that's another 4 countries. Let's move on to the next set. Next on our list, we have Mali, with a population of about 19 million. This West African nation, once a thriving hub of ancient empires, lost its access to the sea due to the arbitrary borders drawn during the scramble for Africa. Its economic growth is hampered by this lack of direct maritime access, making trade and transportation a challenging endeavor. Moving eastward, we find Niger. With an estimated population of 24 million, this country's name is derived from the Niger River, the main source of water and a crucial lifeline for the nation. However, due to the colonially imposed borders, Niger remains landlocked, constraining its development potential. Our journey continues to Rwanda, known as the Land of a Thousand Hills. Despite its vibrant culture and stunning landscapes, Rwanda, with a population of around 12 million, is another victim of colonial border demarcation. The nation's economic growth is stifled, with sea access denied, complicating its import and export activities. Last for this segment, but certainly not least, we have South Sudan. The youngest nation on the block with a population of approximately 11 million, South Sudan was born landlocked in 2011, a consequence of its separation from Sudan. The colonial borders inherited from the past have left this fledgling nation without a coastline, posing significant challenges to its economic growth. It's important to remember that these countries didn't choose to be landlocked. Their lack of sea access is a direct result of colonial powers drawing borders with little regard for the geographic and socio-economic realities of the people living there. The impact of this disregard is still felt today, hindering economic development and limiting opportunities for millions of people. We've covered 12 countries so far, 4 more to go. Coming towards the end of our list, we have Swaziland, also known as Eswatini, with a population of over 1 million. This southern African country lost its access to the sea during colonial times when its borders were drawn by European powers. The people of Eswatini have lived without direct access to the sea, limiting their trade opportunities and economic potential. Next, let's talk about Uganda, a country in East Africa with a population of over 40 million. Uganda became landlocked in the late 19th century during the Scramble for Africa, when European nations partitioned the continent for their own gain. This loss of sea access has affected Uganda's development, making it reliant on neighboring countries for maritime trade. Moving south, we find Zambia, home to over 17 million people. During the colonial era, Zambia, then known as Northern Rhodesia, was carved out by the British, losing its access to the sea. Today, Zambia depends heavily on its neighbors for maritime trade, a situation that has its own challenges. Lastly, we have Zimbabwe, with a population of over 14 million. Once a part of the British Empire as Southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe found itself landlocked post-colonialism. This loss of sea access has greatly impacted Zimbabwe's ability to engage in international trade, and that concludes our list of the 16 landlocked African countries. These nations, despite their rich cultures, resources, and potential, have faced significant challenges due to the loss of sea access. It's a testament to their resilience that they continue to thrive. But imagine the possibilities if this historical injustice was rectified. It's a thought to ponder, isn't it? So in total, we have 16 landlocked African countries, each with its unique history and struggles for sea access. These nations, each remarkable in its own right, have had to bear the brunt of historical injustices that have left them without direct access to the sea. This limitation has undoubtedly impacted their economic growth and development, creating an unfair disadvantage. It's time to change this narrative, and that's where the United Maritime for Africa, or UMFA, comes in. This proposed organization aims to advocate for a re-evaluation of international borders, seeking to facilitate sea access for these 16 countries. By uniting under the banner of UMFA, we can create a powerful voice that cannot be ignored. So let's make a difference. Let's stand together, not just as allies, but as global citizens recognizing the need for fairness and justice. Please share, like, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let's unite and make a difference for these 16 African nations.